So yeah, as the title of the video says, Norman Powell was looking great for the Raptors when the season ended. In March, granted it was like 5 games, or 4 games for him. Still, he averaged 24 points. In January and February, he averaged about 17. And Norman just kind of looked like a different player from what we've seen the past couple of years. I mean, Powell was always a guy who you saw the potential, because occasionally he'd have a big shooting night, or he'd go off the dribble, and we saw the defense and stuff, but I think it was especially in the 2018 season, Powell's confidence was kind of shot, where he didn't know when to pass, didn't know when to shoot, the jumper was always a question with him, and this year he just got better at all of it for the Raptors. As the year ended, he put up 16 points, his percentages were awesome, I mean, 40% on 5 threes, he shot more free throws, and so we dive into it. I mean, the first thing to make note of, shot chart is great. About 80% of his shots come from either 3 or at the rim. Very few mid-range jumpers. We love that, of course, unless you're amazing at them. But if you're not, then don't take them. It's pretty simple. The threes and the going to the basket, both just huge improvements from Powell. If we talk about him going to the rim, because this to me is, like, the threes are interesting, but going to the rim is a little more interesting, because that to me is what really opens up his potential as being a potential, like, star? We're going to say star? Very good player? I don't know. And why it makes the Raptors' future even more interesting between Siakam, Powell, Anunoby, Lowry. Seems like he's going to hold on pretty well. And, of course, Nick Nurse at the helm of it all. I went on a little tangent there, my bad. But with Powell going off the dribble, you know, he's not busting out crazy dribble moves behind the backs or between the legs or crossovers or anything, but he's getting to his spots. First off, he's picking when to go off the dribble really well. He doesn't hesitate. He's a pretty strong guy. I mean, he's listed at 6'3". He's 215 pounds. So he can kind of already move guys out of the way a little bit. But also, it's little things in the Raptors offense. It's like a flare screen, and then just off of his defender being a little bit behind him, Norman just goes into a straight line dribble with the left or the right hand. Doesn't hesitate, like I said before, and just kind of gets to the rim. You know, he doesn't have some crazy burst of speed. He's not jumping over everybody, although he can pull off a good dunk. But he just kind of manages to get into the defense. I mean, he does have a couple of ISOs here and there if you look at his stuff enough, but it's not the go-to. It really is just finding a way to get a little bit of space off the ball most of the time, not all the time, and then just getting into the defense and making a play from there. And it doesn't sound super flashy, but if it's effective, then it's effective, so that's great. As far as his finishing, he does have a little bit of like slipperiness to him, where he will have a big in front of him and he won't pull up. He'll just keep going and keep the dribble alive. I think that's a crucial part of how he's able to do this. And then he can just kind of use either hand around the rim, and it's good. I mean, he shot 68% at the basket this year. It's really, really good. He's also doing a lot on fast breaks. He has been leaking out in transition quite a bit for the Raptors, and usually Lowry finds him, and that works out well. Now, because of the Raptors' players improving so much, I think it's fair to project that Norman could be more of a source of offense moving forward and really beating guys off the dribble. I mean, we've seen Anunoby get better this year. Siakam, of course, we all know that one. Terrence Davis. So I think between Nick Nurse and just that training staff, they do a hell of a job of getting guys better. You know, I mean, the Raptors are quickly becoming kind of the premier team for just doing things right and having the best coach in the league and all that. Whether it leads to championships, I mean, who knows? Maybe they would have went on some wild run, but it seems like Norman is the benefit of all of it too. And as a result, I mean, could we see him in the pick and roll and making plays for guys as, next season or so? Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't write it off. I really wouldn't. Now, his contract situation is interesting. I think if he hit the open market right now, he would certainly get a pretty offer. Although, given we don't know where the cap's going to go, that's going to be a thing. but they've got him under contract for a little while. I mean, $10 million next year, $11 million player option in 2022. That's interesting. I mean, based on how he was playing to close out this season, he would decline that. But given that we don't know what the state of the CBA and everything is going to be in a couple of years, that becomes interesting. If I was the Raptors and if he was going to keep this up, I would hold on to him, but we'll have to see. If we're going to talk about the three-pointer, so it looks better. This is the only way to put it. I mean, his form was always a little weird because I feel like with Powell, he squares up to the basket well, but it's like he shoots it at the top of the shot, and I feel like sometimes he was shooting it on the way down, whereas this year it just seems like it's half a second faster. And while I still don't think he's shooting it on the way up, he is at least shooting it in a natural rhythm, whereas before I feel like he had a bit of Ricky Rubio or Russell Westbrook going on, where it's like by the time he's shooting it, he's either on the way down or it just wouldn't work, right? But now he's going up with it without really thinking about it. I mean, I guess there was a chance we should have seen this coming, because last year he shot 40% on 2.5 threes a game. And so he's essentially doubled the output while maintaining the percentage. And he's doing a little bit off the dribble. It's not all the time, but it's a little bit. Occasionally he'll take one dribble in and stuff. I mean, 95% of his threes have been assisted. That's probably going to be the way it is for his career. I don't think this is a guy who's going to be taking a lot of pull-ups or step-backs or anything, but it seems like he's going to be making threes, and there could be a chance that he's going to attempt more than 5 a game. I mean, you'd have to think so. I guess it just depends on what he's comfortable with, and he seems pretty comfortable shooting threes. I mean, the last few games before the season ended, he went 6 for 12 against the Kings from outside, 4 for 8 against the Warriors. He had a 4 for 11 game against the Hornets, so he's taking them, and they're going in for the most part, so it's very interesting. Can I project on his free throws a bit? I mean, similarly, in that game against the Warriors, he shot 7 free throws. I mean, if he's going to be shooting 7 free throws and 8 threes a game, which is what happened in that Warriors game, and he's going to be efficient on both, then I think we're looking at Norman being a 20-point scorer. So, who knows, maybe not, but he was certainly having those runs. I mean, again, the 5 games before this ended, he had 2 straight nights for the Raptors in a season where they've really needed guys to step up. So, I guess another thing to think about, and Raptors fans won't like this one, but how good of a trade asset is Norman Powell currently? Because you have to imagine that his value will never be higher than this offseason, unless he's going to get even better. Now, that's the interesting thing. You weigh, okay, what could we get for him versus how much he currently costs and how good he can still be. So, depending on who would be available and all that. But, if I can anger Wizards fans too, if Bradley Beal really does want to be traded, then that could have still happened. Then Norman Powell, who suddenly averages 20 a game, could be a pretty good starter in a move like that. Now, I think for a guy like Norman, it becomes tough to look at if we are going to have a playoffs and how he would play, because his momentum was just sky high when the year ended. And it'd be interesting to see if he could channel all that back. I mean, part of the reason he was doing so much is because they needed him to, because the Raptors have had some injuries and stuff. But even then, I mean, you look at that Warriors game where he went off, and they had pretty much all their guys. Siakam, Lowry, Ibaka, Anunoby. So there's a chance that Powell's just really this good now. So, depending on how the Raptors project all that moving forward, and if he can keep this up, that'll be something. I mean, is there a chance that Norman Powell's some 20-point guy, Siakam is borderline top 10, Lowry maintains being... Like, what is Lowry? Is he one of the 25 best players? That's probably fair. If I start naming guys, maybe he's right there. Maybe he's on the outside. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably higher on Lowry than most people are. I'm totally fine with that. The guy's been awesome, especially this year. And then you have Nick Nurse running the show. And the Raptors, they could be... Seems like they're going to be fine, man. I mean, seems like they made the DeRozan trade, and their fortunes have been nuts ever since, even with Kawhi gone. So that's it. Norman Powell. He was playing really well. Now, for all this, is he just going to go back to averaging 13 points a game next season? I mean, it's always possible, but I feel like when you showed the signs that he showed of going off the dribble, finishing inside, and making threes, it's tough to believe that all that just goes away.